good to see everybody. And thank you. First off, thank you so much for partnership with Hagar's Community Church. The financial gift of the Shawl Award has really been such a gift, especially this year through a pandemic. It just feels like a literal channel of grace from God. And so thank you for your willingness to partner with this new ministry and to walk alongside of it. And it's really fun to get to meet you through Zoom. So thank you for your time tonight. So yeah, since January, our world has shifted and changed quicker and faster than what I could have expected. It was early March when things started shutting down in Washington, when the governor said no more groups over 50 could no longer congregate, and there was starting to be the social distancing, and the eventual shelter-in-place order came. And so how that impacted me was I received notification from the prison that I work in, the WCCW, saying that we're going to shut down all programming. All of the women were being put in quarantine, and I kind of was just given a, we'll let you know when you can come back. And so that lasted for actually about 2 weeks. It was actually a shorter period of time than what I expected. That 2 weeks was, there was a lot of anxiety, and I was worried. I had no idea what was going to happen. But after 2 weeks passed, the prison reached out to me. The WCCW still to this day has had not one case of COVID-19. They are testing folks, but we haven't had any cases. And so after a 14-day quarantine period, they felt that they weren't going to let all the volunteers back in. It wasn't back to normal, but they did want to start having some religious programming. And so they reached out to me, and we figured out a way that we could do religious programming for the most amount of people, with like keeping room for social distancing and all of that stuff. And so the way that that's worked out, in some ways, like God's providence is in it. I'm the only chaplain coming into the facility right now. So in a lot of ways, I have more access to the prison than I did before COVID-19. I'm doing rounds on every unit. I'm doing worship services on units that I had no access to before. So there's a receiving unit, like right when you first get to prison, where you hang out for about 6 weeks. I now am allowed in receiving, and I do a weekly worship service there. And I also do a weekly worship service in the mental health unit. And so before COVID-19, I wasn't allowed privileges there, but now I am. And then, so the way that's worked out, I'm doing 9 worship services a week right now, 3 a day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They all range in numbers from about 10 to 20 people so that we can have good amounts of distance between everybody. We're all wearing masks the whole time, which you can imagine is, they have to wear masks all the time, and I have to wear a mask while I'm there. So we've adjusted the worship service to accommodate the needs for social distancing, because singing's not a good idea. Preaching with a mask on is really hard. So when they come in, they're given different options they can do. They can do like watercolor, they can do a finger labyrinth, they can read their Bible. We kind of do meditative practices for the first 15 minutes. Then we do like we set aside quite a bit of time for prayer, because you can imagine they have a lot going on that they need to share and work through. And then we end our time with a Bible study. So it's kind of how we're accommodating worship services right now. And then the one other big blessing that's come out of COVID-19 is we're considered a new worshiping community with 1,001 offices of the Presbyterian Church USA. And we have coming a resident who's coming to be with us starting on August 1st, and 1001 is supporting her to work with Hagar's Community Church. But because of COVID-19, she's not going to be allowed into the prison, because they're not opening the doors for new volunteers, and they're being really restricted on what kind of staff are able to come in. And so through prayer and listening to the Holy Spirit, we actually have created a whole new program for her to begin and start. And so she's going to become the new reentry pastor. And so for the women who are leaving the prison, she's going to be able to connect with them and connect them with congregations and help be their pastor, check in on them, resource them. And so it's actually kind of a cool opportunity that our new pastor, Riley, is going to be able to help walk with folks that are going through the process of reentry. which is also happening at a more rapid pace right now because the state is trying to create more space within our prisons. And so a lot more people, they're on a rapid release schedule instead of what they were before COVID-19. So we actually have a lot more women getting sent back into society. And so it'll be really helpful to have a pastor walk with them. And I can't do it because legally, if I'm your pastor on the inside, I can't connect with you once you leave. And so now that we'll have two pastors who doesn't have any privileges on the inside, she really can do a whole lot with them once they leave. So that's actually a really exciting thing that's happening. So any questions? I was throwing information at you.
Yeah, communion was such an important part of your ministry, and you might just say a word about why the sacrament was so pivotal in drawing the women to the Hagar's Community Church. And I was just curious as to whether it's permitted now and what the future looks like.
We are unfortunately in a place where we are not able to offer communion based on restrictions at the prison and trying to keep everyone as safe as possible. So handing out food isn't really allowed right now. Although I have thought about trying to find the little packets where you pull off the wafer. However, I'm not sure if that would fully encompass like what we did in the past. But communion has always been a really sacred pillar of Hagar's Community Church. We celebrated communion every Saturday evening in worship. And I would always bring in copious amounts of freshly baked bread. And it was, the women have really taught me what it means to come to the table, to be hungry for the bread of Christ and to really be nourished by the bread. They were not coming to pull off the little tiny pieces and barely dip it in the water, but they would pull off like big chunks of bread and dip in the grape juice because they were truly hungry and the bread of Christ was feeding them. And so the spirit of that, I'm trying to put in all of the work that we do, trying to create a space of welcome, a place that nourishes their soul, since I can't bring in the actual elements right now, since we're being kept in this really restricted time. But I do get feedback from the women. They ask often, when do we get to do communion again? So we are looking forward. I just actually came from the prison for some meetings with the administration, and it does seem like July is when some of these rules and restrictions are going to shift. So I'm looking forward to the time when we can celebrate communion again soon. Thanks for asking, Jim. I mean, it's a very diverse congregation that I work with. Sort of the rule of thumb in American life is whatever the greatest minority is in your area is who gets incarcerated the most. And so here in Washington State, that actually ends up being Native Americans. So that's probably the largest demographic of my worshiping community. And then it's a very diverse congregation after that. Yeah, and I will say, like, currently this past weekend, each day, because I do services on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and as the weekend progressed with what was going on in our world, and they do have access to television and news, so they're watching it right alongside of all of us. By Sunday, Sunday was a rough day at the prison. There was some fights breaking out. People were upset. And if you think about it, you're already incarcerated and every facet of life has law enforcement like overseeing it. So it's a really troubling place to kind of be working through those feelings. And so a lot of the women were, I felt very strongly this was a place to open up and just allow the lament and the processing to happen. And so we really just talked through the whole time. And so some of that is just meeting people where they are and helping them find God in the midst of what is chaotic and troubling and painful. I can't fix it, but I can tell them that God sees them in the midst of it. And so that's kind of where I go.